Welcome to Suburban Warrior, the podcast that will impact, inspire, and empower you to transform your mindset and become the badass warrior that you are. I'm your host and fellow warrior, Crissy Pfeiffer, former clinician and corporate marketing exec turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, performance and life coach, and mom to 4 not-so-little warriors. Each week, I will bring you honest conversations with inspiring guests to share their stories of resilience, optimism, success, and simple yet effective strategies so that you transform your thoughts and change your behavior to get the results you want in your life. You will be empowered to take action, warrior up, and believe in you. Let's do this. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of Suburban Warrior Podcast. I am really excited about today's episode, and I think all of you and all of my listeners are going to really gain so much from hearing from my guest today. Today, I'm sitting down with the wonderful Jennifer Lynn Robinson, and she is the CEO of Purposeful Networking. Her services include consulting, moderating, keynotes, and workshops to help build networking, communication, and public speaking skills. As a former litigator, Jennifer also does motivational speaking, detailing her path of reinvention following a near-death accident. She has been featured in local and national media, including CBS, NBC, Fox, PHL 17, Forbes, the Huffington Post, Thrive Global, the Chicago Tribune, and Philadelphia Magazine, just to name a few. And I am most excited to have Jennifer here with us today because I really created Suburban Warrior and this podcast as a means to connect us all, and through connecting us through hearing each other's story. And now more than ever, we need to be talking about networking and connecting during a time when so many of us are feeling more disconnected and isolated than ever. So, Jennifer, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And I really meant what I said about, I think that right now, more than ever, I know we scheduled this interview months ago, and I think it's so timely that you're here with me today because, it's funny. I think as in this, very tech heavy world that we live in, more and more of us feel isolated and lonely, more so than ever. And, yes. It's amazing that your life's purpose is to connect us all and talk to us about how we can not only network, but network with purpose and intention. And I just love that. So,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first, before we get into all of your expertise that you can share with us, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of how you got onto this career path?
Sure. So I was a litigator for about 12 years. And then unfortunately, in May of 2008, I had a near-death accident. And I suffered some very serious physical and also mental injuries, including a traumatic brain injury. So that took me out of my profession. I was almost 35 years old. I was a newlywed. And I had to go on a whole path of recovery and reinvention. So I ended up starting a business, which I've now been running for almost 7 years. At the time, I was being told I should reconsider a career that involved public speaking, even though as a litigator, that's pretty much what I did and what I love. And, so here I am.
That's amazing. So how long did it take you to recover from that accident?
So I would say even now, years later, I'm not recovered. I'm well beyond where I was, obviously. There's a few years, where it was like kind of the immediate, broken bones and multiple surgeries and rehab every day of the week at, cognitive, physical, speech, vestibular, brain trauma, all kinds of therapy that I was in, physical therapy for multiple surgeries. And then beyond that, you sort of try to get used to the new version of your life that involves having chronic problems.
Recovering from a traumatic brain injury can take time and years and years. And, it's interesting that you say that you're still recovering because it's probably a lifelong path, that you're on to, do you ever really get back to a new normal, right? I mean, it is a new normal. I mean, do you ever really get back to normal? Because it's all about really defining what is your new normal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still, as recently as December of 2018, I had a surgery still related to the accident and probably still will need more. So there's that aspect of it. And then, like you're saying, that, there's still the other things. Living with chronic pain, which I know I'm not alone in doing. People just get used to what they have to endure after a while. You either learn to move on or you don't, and I've chosen to move on. And then the mental struggles, I treated for a long time for PTSD and anxiety and depression, and obviously everything related to the brain injury. And, I'm definitely significantly better, but, do I still think in the same way that I did before the accident? Is everything like it was? It's not, and it never will be.
Yeah, absolutely. So because of that, and because of all of the, physical pain that you have had to endure or still enduring, mentally, everything you have to endure, is there something that you can share with us that you think really from a mindset perspective helps you on a daily basis, even today, helps you like get up and do what you do and move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I had, at the time when this happened, I had, obviously the best doctors and therapists and everybody in my life helping me. I was lucky to have a great support system with my husband and my family and friends, which I know a lot of people aren't as lucky to have. So I appreciate everything. But at the same time, I feel like there was a point where it just sort of had to click in my own head. I was in a really dark place for a long time. I had a lot of anger and depression. And I think at some point, you just have to tell yourself, is this the place I want to stay in? Or am I going to do what I can to get myself out of this? I feel like at some point something clicked for me. And I just thought I have to take steps to come up from this rock bottom, and nobody can do it for me.
Yeah. I think that's, a great insight to share, because it is something that is very personal and you have to experience for yourself, right? And it has to be at the right time. But, I know just when working with clients and people who have gone through similar events, it really is the quicker that you can get someone to that place, or the quicker that you can personally look in the mirror and say to yourself, is this where I want to be? And if not, how do I change it? And realizing that it's really all within you, and up to you to change it. Well, that's not very easy at all. It really is all within you to be able to do that. So that's wonderful that you got to that place and that you're moving forward and doing such amazing work.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, I mentioned that the accident was in 2008. I'd say it was about 3.5 years later that I reached that point. So, in the time frame that I'm talking about, my husband and I lost 3 out of our 4 parents. He is an only child. He lost both his parents, one after the other, to colon cancer. And then I lost my mom semi-unexpectedly. I say semi because she had a lot of physical and mental problems, none of which would have taken her out had she taken care of herself. But essentially, it was a passive suicide situation. And we both lost our mothers the same week, early in 2011. So, I had this accident and I turned our lives upside down, and then going through watching both of his parents treat and then, pass away from cancer and everything that happened with my own mother. I think I got to a place early 2011, and that's when I finally left my legal job. I had actually gone back part-time against all of my doctors and therapists' recommendations just to try to get back to some normalcy. And then I really sunk into an even greater kind of rock bottom. And I think you kind of have to get to that place, at some point in order to come out of it and realize that you have to help yourself. But that was it. I mean, it was the accident and then that succession of all of those deaths in our family and losing parents that took me to a place where I kind of looked at the situation, particularly my mom. I think that was really the breaking point for me. Just watching what happened with her and realizing that she couldn't move on from a situation in her life and how I didn't want to go down that same path.
Yeah, wow, that's, that is a really another great insight. So I appreciate you sharing that because, obviously you went through this horrible trauma yourself, and it wasn't until, another situation occurred or multiple situations that you saw it in, someone that you love dearly going through something. and knowing how hard it is, because it's not like you can't change someone else, right? They have to do the work. So that
Yeah.
was something that you saw and realized that, okay, wait a second, I have to do the work. It's up to me, right?
Yeah, I mean, at some point you can let one event or situation in your life define you or not, and that was kind of the point. I chose not.
Yeah, great. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, so then you chose not, which is wonderful. And and we're so happy because now you're on this new path and you started purposeful networking. And so, tell us a little bit about purposeful networking and what your philosophy is.
So when I started the business, it was essentially a consulting business, and that was mainly because I wasn't well enough to do the public speaking that I wanted to do. And I was hoping as the years went on, I would get to a place where that could happen. And thankfully I have. So I started the business basically feeling like I could help people, small business owners, executives, nonprofits, get to a place where they were more comfortable and strategic with their networking and marketing efforts, because I never had any plans to be an entrepreneur. I always thought I'd be a courtroom attorney. Obviously went to all my schooling for that. I was one of those kids, from the time I was 5 or 6, that was the path I knew I was going to be on. My dad's a trial attorney, and I just followed down that path, and I loved it. And I was great at it. And so I never really anticipated running a business. And so I'd say the first year or two in business, I made all the same mistakes that all new business owners, I'm sure, make. And then I saw that I could really help people to do it better. And I also saw the value of how quickly I was able to grow my business with a great network. So really, that was my goal at the beginning. And as time went on and my brain injury improved and I was able to get in front of people and speak again, it has now transitioned, as we sit here today, to much more of a speaking and training business with a small component of consulting. So now I go into, firms, conferences, companies. I talk to all kinds of people, from high schools to, corporate, to groups of women, anything you can think of, and help them with networking. I do motivational speaking around some of the story I've shared and how to rebuild after disruption in your life. All kinds of fun, kind of basic topics that I touch on with different groups, such as how to craft your elevator pitch or how to make a great first impression. So it's a variety of things. It's always interesting and challenging. And I know I was an extrovert before my accident, and then there was a long time where I was not myself and was very isolated and cut off many, many people, most people in my life. And now I'm kind of back to who I was, at that time, but I think actually better.
That's so great. And I think, I love that you said that you're an extrovert before your accident. And then, that the experience of your accident, cut you off a little bit from probably being out there, being able to go places, see people. And, I think that's really where we are right now, right? As a
Yeah.
world. And, going through that, I consider myself like a raging extrovert as well.
A raging extrovert. I
A
love it.
raging extrovert. I know, I really am. Like, I do thrive on being social. I
Yes.
always have, right? It's just kind of part of my personality. And, I think because of that, because of my own feelings and also working with clients over the years who really are pretty much, especially in the probably last 5 years, in my demographic, right? It's women between the ages of 30 and 55. And I think that women in general, especially moms, experience this lack of connection because, I know before we had text, I was the girl who was like constantly on the phone, right? Calling people, talking to people just to catch up, just to say hi. And then as a society, we evolved to this texting platform and we all do it because we're all busy and a lot of people don't have time anymore to pick up the phone. But I do think it has affected us overall as a society because we're not connecting. We're not talking. We don't have the time to physically just pop in each other's houses anymore and say hi and bring them something or let them know we're thinking of them. And I think overall, we're just really feeling disconnected and lonely as a society. And it's sad. So, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. So I guess my question is, in this time of disconnection, really pre-pandemic also, what are some tips that you can give people that will help them to not just network, but truly connect first and foremost with others?
So I think the first thing I would say is, specifically the situation we're in, not pre-pandemic, but, the present time. I've been posting tips every day on how to network and, work remotely and how to market yourself from home and all that kind of good stuff. And I've seen a couple people comment on posts that say, after this, we won't need to network in person anymore. This has shown us that all these networking events are irrelevant and we don't need to pay for them and we don't need to join networking organizations. We don't need to meet in person. We can just replace everything with Zoom and Skype. And, I keep responding, not that I'm getting them all the time, but I've seen them and it's definitely upset me personally because of my life philosophy. And I keep commenting, they're not a replacement. It's great that we have these tools so that we can navigate this time. And of course, I've gone through multiple periods where I was isolated home from surgeries, and it's great to have all these tools where you can connect with people. But I don't feel it's ever a replacement, whether it's pre-pandemic or during the pandemic.
Right,
I think
right.
it's so important to have those in-person connections with people. There's a lot that gets lost in translation with text and email and even over, virtual kind of situations like Zoom and Skype. I just think there's something to be said for sitting with somebody and making a connection and having a spark and a conversation and building from there. So I think that all the tools are great, but I think that there's no replacement for the in-person networking. As a generalization, I would say, I do see a lot of younger generations, like younger than me, they've grown up with more of that. Like I didn't grow up with that. So,
Right.
Growing up with the texting and the social media, there are a lot of people, not everyone. I mean, there's some millennials I know who are extremely good at networking, better than I am at networking. But, there are a lot of millennials and younger that this is their norm. So the idea of the face-to-face connecting, especially when they get into situations like having to do interviews for jobs or internships or going to networking events and navigating them, it's not really something they're accustomed to speak to people in person.
So now that we, at least for the time being right now, and it may be weeks, it may be months, no one knows. What can people do besides okay, we have Zoom, which is great. Is there anything else that you can recommend from a networking perspective? Like if, entrepreneurs, people who are running small businesses, they need to network with people that are outside of their friends and family. How do they go about that?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult time right now because you can't market and sell in the same way, even though we're in a position, a lot of us small business owners, where you're trying to keep your business going and in a lot of cases save your business. Your business may have, it may be doing okay. For some people it's doing better. For a lot of people it's doing worse. Some people, most of their business has dried up, like my friends in the hospitality industry. It's a very difficult time. So, but you have to be mindful of, the situation people are in right now. I mean, people are very stressed out. There's a lot of uncertainty, not only about their businesses, but about pretty much every aspect of life right now.
Right.
So it's really not a time to be selling to people. I would say from a networking standpoint, it's a great time because we never really have all this time, right? We're usually running from place to place. It's a great time to reconnect with people in your network. So your clients, your customers, people that you already have relationships with, it doesn't have to be super close relationships with, even if it's just acquaintances that you've been meaning to have a Zoom call with or have a call with and get to know better. This is a great time to do that. But I wouldn't say it's a great time to reach out to new prospects and leads, people you don't know, to tell them all about the services or your products that you sell and try to get them to purchase. It doesn't mean no purchasing or selling will be going on, but I would just be mindful of reaching out to people specifically for that purpose. And even the people that you know in your network that you're reaching out to, I would say also be mindful of how you're approaching those conversations. You don't really need an agenda, and I don't think you should have one. It's perfectly acceptable to call people and just say, how's it going? How's that homeschooling going? Like, how are you and your spouse navigating both working at home? Like, how are you managing? Is there anything I can help with? I think those are the conversations that people really want to engage with right now. So I would say it's a great time for all of that. The tools that we're talking about, the Zoom and the Skype, I mean, besides doing the one-on-ones, which I think is so important still to do, I think there's so many tools that we've been seeing out there where people are using house party and, Netflix watch parties and, virtual happy hours, whether it's with work colleagues or friends. I mean, I just did a fun one last night with, you can see, well, now people on the podcast can't see my backdrop, but I'm obsessed with Lily Pulitzer, which is like a resort lifestyle brand. And I'm in a group locally called Lily and Philly for people in the Philadelphia area that are all obsessed with Lily Pulitzer.
Oh my God, I love that. That is amazing.
So, I think it's finding those points of commonality is always a good networking tool. So, I mean, it's been people that I've become really close friends and even gotten some business from, but just sharing a love for something. So, we did a virtual event last night with my Lily and Philly crew, and we all wore our Lily and, talked about how we were doing. I mean, the conversation obviously wasn't necessarily about the lifestyle brand. It was just about how everybody was making out and how we can help each other and just kind of putting smiles on people's faces. And that's really what it's about right now. So I think doing things like that's important. I would also say one of my go-tos that I always talk about is Adam Grant. He's the youngest tenured professor at Wharton, and he's written a couple of bestsellers, including his first one called Give and Take, all about building relationships. So I always recommend, and I think this time more than ever, it's so important to look at your loose connections and dormant ties in your network. And those are people that are on the outskirts of your network that aren't inner circle, either that you haven't talked to for a long time, or people that are you were once close with, but you're not close with anymore. And it doesn't mean because you've had a falling out. It could be a former coworker and you went on to a new job, or somebody you went to camp with for 10 years, but you haven't reached out to for a while, or a college roommate. Those people in your life that you already have that likability and trust built up with, this is also a great time to reach out to people like that in your network. Again, those aren't strangers. Those are people that you once had close connections with. It's a great time to rekindle those connections. And as Adam Grant puts it, and I fully agree, the reason it's important to reach out to people like that, of course, catching up, but also a lot of people assume that their opportunities will come from their inner circle. And actually the opposite's true. Your opportunities generally will come from people who are on the outskirts of your network, or sometimes people that barely know you, that might meet you once or twice and think you'd be right for something. So it's really important to cultivate those relationships.
Yes, I could not agree more with that. And I do love, you just shared so much great information. I was taking notes, but what you just said lastly, it is interesting. I think people, especially entrepreneurs and small business owners, when they're starting out, truly always think that they're going to get the most support and, from their inner circle or from family. And I think then they get really frustrated. It's like sort of like a little spot of contention because they get frustrated and then they get really disappointed when that inner circle or their family aren't the first ones, to support them. And I think it's really important to think about going beyond that. And to your point, when you really think about how many people you've met in your lifetime in past jobs and college and high school and reaching out to those people, it's amazing how many really want to support you or see that there's a common thread between what you're doing and what they're doing. And again, that just speaks to not getting frustrated and continuing on and believing in what you're doing and going past that inner circle to do that. So I love that tip. And I also love all the ideas you shared about how we can connect right now, right? The Netflix watch parties, finding people with connections. The Lily and Philly is so great, but, and like you said, you're not just talking about Lily Pulitzer in the group. You're all sharing and connecting. And it's just another way to get a group of people together. And obviously it can't be live right now, but to talk about what you're feeling, what you're doing. And, just like this podcast, if you're on a Zoom call and you can take one little piece of inspiration or information from that call, then it's a win, right?
Yeah. I wanted to mention two other things too that I've been doing right now that might be helpful. I started a Facebook group a couple weeks ago called the Social Survival Guide. And the whole premise of it is just for people to connect and share positive stories and virtual events and activities that are free. So we have about 2,100 members so far, and it's been amazing to see what's developed from the group. Like I'll give one example. Somebody had posted, I think I put up a discussion question about what was something good that came out of this time so far being home, like what was something positive that came out of it. And somebody I don't know who's a member of the group responded that she was happy she'd be able to undergo chemo and lose her hair and nobody would see her because we're all stuck at home, which was, I guess something positive to take out of a dark situation, but it was still, I have to say, kind of sad to read.
Yeah.
Right away, someone else from the group chimed in, and they work for a cancer nonprofit, and they said, we have virtual events going on right now that are free for people that got a recent cancer diagnosis, just for support. And they were able to connect with each other in that group over that. And she was so excited, it seemed like in the comments at least, to provide resources in that way. So, it doesn't have to be that heavy per se, but I'm just giving an example. The group is amazing. I don't allow people, like I'm the only admin. So, if people are trying to put things in there that are political or even, resources about, how to get loans for your business and things like that, even though that's productive, there's so many other groups and news stories about that. I want people to come there as an escape. So I really just make it all about the positivity. So that's one thing I've done during this time. And the other thing is Monday to Friday, I've been trying to showcase a local business every day on my social media. Because I know how hard it is as a small business owner. And a lot of people right now aren't really able to do the marketing and networking that they usually do. So every morning I just do a little blurb on my personal Facebook page with a link to the website and a photo showcasing a local business.
That's great. Those are wonderful, things to share and connect us and connect businesses, because as we all know, when we do good, we feel good. And, a podcast episode maybe one or two ago was about highlighting small businesses locally here on the main line and just sort of what they're doing to shift their business models to be able to thrive in this time. And I think it is so important for all of us to, it's really about just having each other's back. And it may feel, small and insignificant, but, by posting every day a different business, think about how many people you're reaching with that business. And it just feels good. It feels good for you. It feels great for that business owner. And again, it's really about creating this positive feeling and these positive emotions that we can all share during this time, because really, from a mindset perspective and mindfulness, in order to get into that place, it's, taking all these little actions, one little step at a time.
Absolutely. And, it's something that is easy. It takes less than 5 minutes for me to do. I love this. It's another Adam Grant idea, this idea of the 5-minute favor, doing things that are valuable to other people, but take you less than 5 minutes, doing that kind of showcase of a local business like I was talking about, or a virtual introduction, or sending somebody an article that might be helpful to them and growing their business or their branding. There's different things you can do at home, whether it's before or during this pandemic, that can be helpful to people that don't cost you anything but a little bit of time. And like you said, it's those small steps and the kindness, and it really goes a long way in cultivating your network.
Yeah, I love that idea of the 5-minute favor. That's a great one. And, I have been trying to do something similar, just in the sense of, I think that there's so many people in our lives that we're so busy usually, right? That we don't really even stop to tell them how much they mean to us. Yes. Or people in our past who have done something for us, but, we never really truly said thank you. Or maybe they don't really even know what an impact they made in our life, because going through it, you don't realize it, but then maybe looking back, you think, my gosh, all that person did for me, X, Y, Z, and I never really got a chance to thank them. So I think, to your point, really just taking maybe like 5-10 minutes, whether it's shooting them an email or a Facebook message, or a text, and just saying, hey, you did X, Y, Z for me, and I'm so grateful for it. And I just wanted you to know. Just even doing a simple gesture like that, I think really goes a long way.
I totally agree. And, one other thing that's nice is, when you make a virtual introduction for people, I think it's really important to try to circle back with them and tell them how that developed. Like I love when I get emails from people that say, you probably don't remember, but 3 months ago, you did this email for me with so-and-so. And I just want to let you know that we finally connected and this was what came of it. I love that circling back. And I think that's also important when people are reaching out to their network for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because a lot of times we do facilitate introductions and then we have no idea what happened after it, right? So it feels good to get that feedback and know, like, oh my gosh, that worked out really well.
And even if it didn't work out, like just to say, like, I connected with them, thank you, yeah.
Absolutely. It's like setting people up for a blind date and
Exactly.
wanting to know the outcome of it, right?
Exactly like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that you have shared so many amazing tips with us. I know I personally am going to try and implement some of them, such as the Netflix watch parties, or you mentioned house party. I know my kids have been using that a lot, especially my son who's a bit younger and isn't really on Zoom. So there's so many different ways that not only us but our kids can be connecting with people and
Yes.
networking, not just, I mean, obviously for business purposes, but also just really to stay connected and engaged with the people in our lives that are the most important to us at this time.
It's so important that you said not just for business, because you keep hearing it's not emotional or social isolation, it's just physical isolation or distancing.
Right.
You can really get in your own head at a time like this with too much news and fear and uncertainty. And I've been at that place. I've been at that place with everything that happened to me, and I've seen the results of kind of getting in your own head and isolating yourself. So even if you feel like you don't know what to say to people right now, or you don't really feel like connecting, or you have fear and uncertainty, it's so important to just reach out to people at least once a day. Put something on your calendar where you're reaching out to somebody, whether it's for business or personal or both, a call, a Zoom meeting, whatever it may be, something on your calendar to anchor the day and connect you with somebody in the outside world, outside of your immediate, whether you're living alone or your immediate family, somebody outside of your house.
Yes, absolutely. Because social connections are essential right now. And I think that's a great idea for people that, I mean, listen, I'm literally wake up every day fearful. I mean, I have the tools and I know what I need to do to get out of that mindset. But it's not that we're not all living in fear, and it's hard to not worry about the future. But it's even more important for us to take those feelings, recognize them, and switch out of them as quick as possible and focus on something that we can control right now.
Yeah, and I think,
So,
as time goes on and we're home and there's milestones, whether that's somebody's birthday or, I saw somebody that was going to do their bridal shower this Saturday virtually. So, even though that's not the way you wanted those kinds of events to transpire, I think it's really important to find meaningful ways to still connect with people and mark those milestones, even if later on you might do something bigger when we're allowed out of our physical isolation.
exactly, exactly. I love that. We have had our fair share of birthday drive-bys in the house. It's gotten us out of the house, and it's provided a little excitement for the day.
Yeah.
Well, Jennifer, I want to thank you so very much for joining me here today. You've shared some amazing tips, and I think that as time goes on, we're going to need to put these tips to use very much on a daily basis. So thank you so much. And why don't you tell us, I know your website is Purposeful Networking, and tell us how my listeners can find you on social.
Sure. So yes, my website's purposefulnetworking.com. You can always email me at jennifer@purposefulnetworking.com. And then I'm on Twitter and Instagram at RU Networked, AREYOU Networked.
Awesome. And I do follow you on Instagram and I love it. So for those that aren't following Jennifer, absolutely check her out. And thanks so much for being here. We will see you next time.